Damn it, woman, stop! God!
Hello, right there.
Thanks, Steve, for reminding me to put the interview back up. Also, I just want to say I'm basically waiting until I get the check, make sure I actually get the $5,000, it clears and everything, and then once I do, I'm going to do a final overview video about this whole thing. I suspect, having thought about it some, Steve is probably Sergeant Patrick O'Malley, so I understand why he'd be.
Or somebody that knows him.
Or somebody that knows him. I understand why he'd be very interested in hearing the interview. I think you'll find it totally fair. Anyway, but I'll follow up with like a last summary of the whole experience once I get the money.
Are you thinking this because he's the only one that's showing particular interest?
Well, because he said, first of all, he's gone to great lengths to be anonymous. Mm-hmm. Like his name's XXXXXX, and his channel has no content or any identifying features at all. And then he identified himself as Steve, a lawyer from my city, with an opinion about things, but he didn't really sound like a lawyer. And he sounded more like a policeman who's advocating. Because he said like the cop had the right to do what he did, which doesn't make any sense at all in terms of the meaning of the word right. It has a legal meaning, that's... Anyway, that's not what I want to get into. I just wanted to have this little preface, and here's the interview. This is from whatever day that was, like last Thursday or something. I went to this place where it's like conference rooms and stuff, and we sat down and we did this interview. I enjoyed myself a lot. It was...
In Starbucks, they have conference rooms?
No, we met at Starbucks, and they walked me over to some other place.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and it was like conference rooms.
You and your frumpy old talking with famous t-shirt and them and all of their
Well, the
fancy garb.
The two people who met me were police officers, sergeants, I believe, in suits, and they were dressed like detectives. Like how police officers were uniforms, detectives were suits. I don't know if they were detectives, but they were dressed in suits.
They looked official.
Yeah, and they were very nice, and they walked me over to the conference rooms, and then I met with some city officials who were also very nice. But anyway, I'll talk more about that. An overview summary overall of my feelings about the experience after I get the money. So I'm 99.999% sure they're not going to try to bamboozle me and not give me my money. But
no, they wouldn't do that. They have it on video.
Right. So anyway, well, they don't have the agreement on video, but that's not the point. I just don't think they're going to, because it's like I'm just too noisy for them to try to do. Is that?
Yes, you are.
All I want is them to be. It'd have to be really unfair to me to do that, because I didn't do anything wrong or cheated. I didn't try to leverage anything from them. Anyway, that's all neither here nor there. This is the interview. Thank you for watching it. And if you're wondering why I put it up again, it's because I had to take it down because never mind all that stuff.
What's the date we're talking about here with this incident? What do you recall it to be?
It was the Tuesday before this one that most recently passed. So if today is the 25th, is it?
Today's the 26th. This past
26th.
Tuesday was the 24th,
So
my
the
birthday.
one before that, okay. So the one before that was the 17th then.
Okay, there you go. And what time of day are we talking about?
Fairly late. It was after Kim and I got done with dinner. We went into Norm's and we saw the helicopter circling down below, a few blocks down south from there. And then we came out of Norm's. It was still circling. So Kim said, "Let's go down and see what's going on."
Which Norm's?
It was the Norm's just south of the freeway on. I think is it Indian Hill? I don't remember the street name. I'm not sure. It's the one it's the only Norm's in Pomona, probably. It's the one right south of the 10 freeway.
So you came outside. Is it dark at that time?
Yes, it was dark.
And questions I always ask, that day, had you consumed any alcohol and or drugs?
No. Well, I mean, if you say illegal drugs, no.
That leads me to say then illegal. The
Yeah,
only
no
one I can
alcohol.
think of is marijuana.
It was marijuana.
Okay.
Yeah. No alcohol. No real drugs. Just marijuana.
Do you mind if I ask when you last had the marijuana then?
I mean, I smoke it all day, every day, pretty much. So when you've been smoking it for 30 years or something, it doesn't really do much to you.
So as you exited Norm's restaurant, how are you feeling?
Good, full.
Okay.
We had a nice meal.
And you would say of clear mind?
Clear mind
Okay.
and healthy body and soul.
Okay, you come outside and you saw the helo was still circling. What then occurred?
Well, my wife likes things like accidents, police action, stuff like that, disasters, weather events, whatever. So she said, let's go down there. And I said, Kim, let's go home. She said, no, let's go down there. So, of course, she wins those kind of arguments. We went down there, and there were a bunch of people gathered around. And so we parked where everybody was gathered around, and we got out of the car. And, there we were at the police activity.
And when you say you went down there, where is down there?
It was a few blocks south of Norm's. We drove towards where the helicopter was flying around. The helicopter was still going, it had been going on through our whole dinner, obviously, because it was still going. So it was easy to locate,
Okay. And parked in where you parked, can you describe what side of the roadway?
We parked on the south side of the east-west traveling road, which I also don't know the name of. But I think the name of the little street that crossed it where the actual action was something like Bonnie Bray. It says it on the video, but I don't remember exactly. Anyway, we parked there on the south side of the road. It was in a parking lot next to what appeared to be like a supermarket or something, although I didn't go around the front to see what kind of market it was or anything. But where we parked on the side was closest to where the police activity was that people could park, so that's where we parked.
And about how close was it to the police activity?
Well, it was this like that shopping area, which was a supermarket or whatever, and then the far western, the far easternmost driveway of that went onto this little street that I'm calling Bonnie Bray, but may have been called something slightly different than that. And then across that little street right there, that's where the house was, where the action was going on. So it was, the closest you could get and park where there was parking. So we did.
So it sounds like from your description, you're just across the street from where this police activity was going on.
Correct.
And we're talking about like a residential street as opposed to a multi-laned
right,
roadway.
but it was where we were standing was on the shopping center side of Bonnie Bray, which is going north-south. We're looking across Bonnie Bray, and then there's a house that the action's not going on at, and then the house next to that is where the action's going on. So it's like there's a buffer house between the place where we're looking and where we're looking at.
What distance would you estimate that to be that you were from this activity at that time?
Let me think about it. This is not a strong suit of mine, distance estimation, but let me give it a shot anyway.
Okay.
See, I'd say I'm going to say 60 to 80 feet.
And what's the lighting like at that location?
Well, it's pretty. Everything's pretty visible because there's the helicopters going around putting light on things. There's fire trucks with the lights all spinning around. A fire truck, one fire truck. There's a bunch of cop cars with their lights on. There's people shining lights on the activity from the cops are shining lights or whatever. And the area where the guy is, the homeless guy or whatever he was, we'll call him guy with towel on head. The guy with the towel on his head, he was standing on like a patio in the front of this house, and there were lights there too. So it was easy to see what was going on there because there were a lot of different light sources on the action. And and outside the action it's dark. So how it's like it's dark outside and you look inside a lighted house, you can see really clearly. So it was easy to see what we could see, what wasn't obstructed.
And you say towel on head.
Towel on head guy.
Towel on head guy. Did that give you an idea of what ethnicity he was or where he was from? Or you say that, I'm thinking Middle Eastern person.
No. He wasn't Middle Eastern or anything.
Okay.
he actually had a towel on his head.
Oh, okay. All
It
right.
wasn't like a towel. I wasn't using a racial slurs. I mean, he actually had a towel. It would appear to be a towel on his head. I think he was mentally ill, or maybe he was referred to by somebody else in the crowd as a crackhead. I don't know anything about the gentleman. Except that he had a towel on his head, and he was carrying what looked to me it could be a pole. I was told by others in the crowd that it was a machete. So I was like, well, I guess he's got a machete. It was some sort of tall thing that was long and thin. It was like it could have been a machete, maybe. I don't know. I couldn't really see what it was. It didn't look like one to me, but it looked more like a pole or something. Regardless, he was pacing back and forth on this patio with the towel thing and his stick or whatever it was.
Did this person appear to be an adult? It's a male.
Yeah, it was
correct?
it was a male adult, probably I don't know, 20s, I would guess. Not apparently responding to. I couldn't hear what the police were saying to him, whatever they were saying to him, from where I was at first, anyway, for sure. And then but obviously he wasn't following their instructions, or he would have been in custody. So they're all standing there, with their beanbag guns and such out, and pointing them at him, and presumably giving him instructions. And he's just pacing back and forth with his stick or machete or whatever it was, and not listening to them, I guess. I don't know. I couldn't hear them. I couldn't hear them talking to each other.
Could you hear voices though?
Yeah, I
Is
could
it-
hear meow, 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 or something from over there, but I couldn't make out what they were saying.
Sound like maybe someone was giving commands? Maybe that kind of tone?
I would assume that based on all the data that I had to actually draw from, I concluded that the police were giving him orders to come and drop his stick or whatever and come over and be arrested, and he was probably not complying with them. That would be the most data supported conclusion I could have drawn from what I was able to see and hear.
What kind of police presence, numbers wise, did you see there working this?
Well, there was at least 10 or 12 cops surrounding this guy and the patio and such, And some of them were more in a I got my gun drawn kind of position, and some of them were more in a I'm shining a light on you kind of position. And so they had it's like there's the house, which he's up against, and he can't get into it, I guess. They must have the door locked, I'm presuming. And then there's the patio, and then there's this little brick wall thing that goes around the yard. So they're all around this brick wall, he's not going anywhere for sure. The only way he could possibly go anywhere would be he'd have to scale the wall of the house and climb up onto the roof or something. So he's not going anywhere.
Okay. Could you hear anything that man was saying? Or if he was even saying anything?
Not at that point. Eventually I could hear him later on when he was wailing in agony, but I couldn't hear him at that point, no.
All right, so you're standing across the street looking at this, and you have no idea probably what that man had done or
Well, I
why.
asked people around me, and they said he had a machete, and he tried to seek admission into this house, but they didn't know who he was, and so those people who lived there called the cops, understandably. That's what I heard from bystanders. I have no reason to believe that's true or anything. I'm just saying I asked, and that's what people told me. That was the story going around the crowd.
All right, continue, what happened?
Okay, so
next?
then eventually the guy starts moving towards the cops more. Instead of being pacing over here where he just keeps staying in this little sort of imaginary box, like a short amount of distance where he keeps kind of going back and forth, he actually starts coming towards one of the cops who's standing over here by the little wall, right? And I'm like, I should say to my wife, not to the guy that can't hear me, but it's like, don't go over there. They're gonna start shooting the beanbags at you or whatever. And sure enough, they did. He went over there and they shot him with the beanbag gun. And I'm like, okay, all right, I understand you got to shoot him with a beanbag gun, but just go get him now. Just go grab him, because pretty quick. He I guess he went down to one knee or something. It's like they shot him with the beanbag gun, and then I couldn't see him again as much. And then the ambulance came after they shot him a couple more times with the beanbag gun. I'm assuming they're beanbag guns. I don't really know that, but they're shooting something that's obviously not bullets, because if they were shooting bullets at him, it would have made a louder bang and he would have died or had blood coming out of him or something. I don't know. So they're not shooting bullets, they're shooting something else, like rubber bullets or beanbags or something. And he goes down, sort of like not standing up anymore. And then the ambulance comes. The ambulance comes and drives in front of me and makes it so I can't see anymore, because it's coming up that little street. What I'm referring to is Bonnie Bray, but which may have not actually been called that. May have been called something similar to that. Anyway, it's coming up from the south to the north of that little street, and I'm standing across that little street, remember? And so when it comes in front of me, then it blocks my view. So I can't see anymore what's going on over there. So I decide to move, and I go around. So the bigger street, it's like this is Bonnie Bray's this little street going north-south. The bigger street going east-west is a divided street. It's got 2 lanes, I think, on each side, and it's on the right side, there's 2 lanes. Well, that's where the right side looking, if you're looking north, then the right side of the, if you're looking north, then the right side of the street. If you're looking east, the right side of the street. That's where the action is. And so I go across the street, across the median to the other side of the street, where there's a big crowd of people over there too, looking. And there's some people, a couple people up on the median. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to go way over there. I'm going to go to the median. So I go to the median, and I make my way there, and I get to the spot where I'm going to start filming. And at that point, I turned my camera back on. My wife's phone, and she was almost out of electricity in her phone, so I had to just take like a few short videos. I couldn't just keep it running the whole time, you know. So I started my camera up again. By the time I started up again, though, they'd been tasing the guy for quite a while. It's like, you know, the first thing I say when I start the camera back up again is, they are tasing the fuck out of this guy, and they were, and you know. At that point, I got my camera up, and I start to hear the guy, and he's, you know, screaming something. I don't make out exactly what it is, but, you know, one doesn't need to hear descriptive language to understand agony and wailing. So, you know, after a little bit more of that, I'm like, I didn't even think about it. I couldn't just stand there. So I just said, you know, stop tasing him. And you're hurting him, and I may not have said exactly you're hurting him. Some of what I'm saying now might be a paraphrase. I'm not quoting myself word for word here, but the gist of what I said was, stop tasing him. You don't have any good enough reason to be hurting him anymore, because he's already disarmed or not a threat at all of any kind. You know, he's already been de-threatified. That was the meaning of what I was saying to them. I may have said something like, you don't have the right to do this, which would be dumb, because that's not what the problem is there. It's not a rights-based issue. It's in that regard. It's not like the fact that they don't have the right to do that is the problem. The fact is they're transgressing somebody else's right. So it would have been, if I did say that, which I think I did, that was dumb of me to say, because it was using the word too loosely. But regardless, not because they weren't violating his rights, they certainly were, but not because it's not an issue of their rights. Anyway, that's irrelevant. So I started screaming these things at them, the cops, or shouting. I wasn't really screaming, I was saying, you know, shouting at a loud voice.
And you're filming at the same time?
Yeah, I'm filming at the same time.
Okay. And it's recording you, what you're saying?
But it's not, it's recording what I'm saying, is recording the video, the looking part is looking at the action, the sounding part, you can hear what's going on over there, kind of faintly, but you can hear the guy screaming, and then you can hear me saying what I say, and then shortly after I start talking, because nobody was saying anything, shortly after I started saying something, the guy next to me, who was kind of like waiting for permission to say something, I guess, he joined in right in too, and so we're both yelling at him now, and then somebody comes up to me, like really close to me, and I'm like, excuse me. And then I realize it's a cop, and he puts the butt of his gun, or beanbag gun, or whatever it is, into my ribs, and I'm like, and then at that point I realize it's a cop. I'm like, oh my God, and he shouts some things like back off, or or get out of the street or something. And so of course I back away, but I'm still filming, and I say, "You just physically assaulted me," and he doesn't really say anything. And then I say, "You just physically assaulted me, you criminal! You criminally assaulted me, you criminal! You fucking criminal!" I said something like that. Anyway, then this dumbass lady comes up, and she's like, "Leave him alone, he's just doing his job," to me. And I said, "He assaulted me." And then she's like, "Did any of you," she turns around to all these people behind us, and she's like, "Did any of you see him? Did you see me touch him?" And because she thinks I'm saying that I assaulted her. I said, "I didn't say I assaulted you. I said, I didn't say you assaulted me. I said, he assaulted me," pointing to the cop again, And then she's like, "Well, there's a crackhead and there are kids in the house." And I'm like, "Well, how does that justify him assaulting me? Because that has nothing to do with this. It's completely irrelevant, And she wouldn't answer me. So I followed her around a little bit. I'm like, "How does that justify it? Please explain how that justifies assaulting a citizen." And she didn't have an answer for me. And then finally she just said, "Fuck off, weirdo." So then I went away from her. And somebody else was over there being stupid too, yelling at me like, "They're doing good work. Can't you learn to recognize good work?" It's like, come on. What I said when I first got there should have been what they did, which is they should tell the firemen to squirt him with a hose. They squirt that guy with a hose, he's going to give up really quickly because it was a pretty chilly night. And you don't want to stand on the porch cold and wet. And that would have solved the problem. If they don't know how to do that, they could ask me. I would have squirted them with the hose for them.
It sounds like others around were coming to the defense of the police.
Two others were.
And
yes.
opposed, two of them were, but
Two people
they
did.
didn't like what your comments were.
They did not like it at all. And my point being, foremost, that's exactly why I shouldn't be silenced in making those comments, because morons like those two people need to hear what I have to say. The funny thing is, who the lady was, the idiot lady, was the dude who was standing next to me yelling at the cop's woman. And because shortly after I saw them fighting with each other about it, like arguing, not fighting, just arguing. And the other dude was like clapping, "That's good work," or whatever. Well, if that's who's on your team with those two morons, then it's not a good team to be on.
So obviously, from what you're seeing, Eric, you view this as the police were using excessive. They were handling this man excessively. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
from your viewpoint,
my conclusion is this can be indisputably concluded that at some point their dealings with this man went from solvency oriented, in order where they ceased to look for a solution at some point, and began to be simply an expression of street justice. It's like there's only so much screaming in agony you can justify with "this guy continues to be a threat." He may be a superhero who is continuing to look for ways to strike out at the cops as he's writhing in agony. In theory, I guess. Maybe the cops are incredibly cowardly, so that even when there's a disarmed man screaming in agony, they're still afraid for their lives. I don't know. But regardless, I agree. I think it was absolutely excessive. But that's not what I complained about.
what is it that you complained about?
I complained about the cop silencing me. Because the only reason he came up and assaulted me, and I want to stress right away so everybody knows for the record, I was completely uninjured physically. I incurred no physical harms, okay? So he assaulted me with the intent to not hurt me, which I appreciate, and he deserved a little bit of credit for that. But what's much more important is that he did succeed in silencing me, because I stopped shouting at the cops about them stopping to tase this guy and started shouting at him about assaulting me instead. And then that got that lady involved when she came to the defense of the cop. And so then all of a sudden, my whole agenda there was derailed, right? It's like, my point is, if I'm going to do the right thing in that moment, and the right thing is within the range of stuff called acceptable expressions of autonomy in the United States, namely speaking truth to power, if I'm going to do the right thing in that moment, there's a limited time frame where I can have efficacy with that. I can only have efficacy with that for as long as they continue to do it. And if I continue to be shouty at them when they're doing it, maybe I'll stop it sooner. But if they silence me, then I have no ability to do that anymore. That cannot be recovered. They cannot give that back to me. It's not like if they search my car and they don't take anything and let me go. Well, you wasted a couple of my minutes. It's hard to really justify suing you because you didn't really do any harm. In this instance, the harm they did is irrecoverable. I no longer have the opportunity to express that moral agency to help with that situation and have people who need to hear those words of mine, hear them. So that's why I think that the individual police officer who assaulted me, and absolutely not the city, should be held liable in civil court, and that his qualified immunity should be quashed because it exactly fits the case law on the matter, and so that's what I want to do. I want to sue him for $1,000. If he's cooperative. The thing is, I have to get him to be cooperative with the idea of the qualified immunity challenge, or else I'm not going to get the point of law and the precedent that I want to set here. And so, as a consequence, I have to send him I've written the demand letter. It says, you, Sergeant Patrick O'Malley, can pay me $5,000 right now and I'll just go away and that's it, we're done. You have to do that because otherwise you can't sue them unless they refuse to give you something first, you know. So, and then second, I'm going to say, but if you agree to challenge your on the grounds of qualified immunity, if you agree to challenge on the grounds of qualified immunity and agree to the following stipulations, that if I win the grounds of qualified immunity, you pay me $1,000. If I lose the grounds of qualified immunity, you pay me $500. Then we can do that. Or if you just want to be adversarial and not respond to me at all, then I'll just sue you for $6,500 and we'll see how it flies. But I want to be teamed up with his either legal representation or his agreement. If he doesn't have legal representation, well, he will have a union lawyer, right? Mm-hmm. I want that union lawyer to help me get qualified immunity quashed. And if he does that, he can, you know, I'm negotiable too. He doesn't even really have to pay me anything. If I can get my qualified immunity thing, don't tell him that though, right? Okay. But you know, if he's fully cooperative on that, then that's fine, and then I'll get my point of law established.
Okay. All right. Did you see you identified the officer as Patrick O'Malley? Is he the one who assaulted you? You say?
Yeah, and the reason I know that is because a commenter on my YouTube channel commented and said his name's Patrick O'Malley, and I assumed it was bullshit. I was like, there is no way this cop's name is Patrick O'Malley. You know, it's like such a stereotypical name. But actually, when I looked it up, his face popped up, and I was like, that's definitely him. Yeah, that's his name, I guess. His real name, his name's Sergeant Patrick O'Malley.
Did you see him approaching you?
No. When he first made contact with me, I assumed it was a regular person. That's why I said, excuse me. And then I realized it was a cop, and I'm like, oh my God, what is happening here?
You realized he was a cop after you felt something in your ribs, did you say?
Well, after I said, excuse me, there's I guess it was right after, the same time or something. All of a sudden there's this sort of noise of him shouting something at me concurrently with him contacting me. And then there's a push part with the butt of the gun hits my ribs. At that point where I switched from, excuse me, there's some person who's getting too close to me for no reason, to, oh my God, this is a cop assaulting me. And then I backed away from him, obviously, and the rest is as I said.
Okay. What side? What ribs? Right or left?
It was the right.
And you know it was the butt of the beanbag gun, did you say?
It was the butt of whatever kind of weapon he was carrying. If I didn't suspect, I guess, that it wasn't a real firearm, based on the fact that the other cops had been shooting stuff that wasn't real firearms, then I would have concluded it was a shotgun. But I'm pretty sure it wasn't actually a shotgun. I'm pretty sure it was a beanbag gun. I think it even had a green dot on it, or something like that would suggest it was non-lethal, or maybe. I mean, I don't know if that's just me speculating as to what that would mean, but.
What else did he have to say to you after you felt the jab in the ribs?
I think he said, back off, get out of the street. Of course, I wasn't in the street when he came and assaulted me. I was on the median. And then he pushed me into the street. So that makes no sense that he would say, even if he did want me to get out of the street, all he has to do is tell me, I'll move back, I don't care. I'm not trying to, go interfere with anything. I'll obey his orders. He didn't have to push me.
Well, I wanted to follow up then after the initial contact by him, verbally, and then the jab, you said he pushed you off the median?
Well, I mean, with the butt of his gun, he basically pushed me with the butt of his gun off of the median. So that's why I'm saying it was technically an assault, but it was more like a push because he wasn't trying to hurt me, and he didn't hurt me at all.
Okay. So there was a one physical contact?
Yeah.
And no others thereafter?
No others
okay,
thereafter.
all right,
no.
I see.
Yeah, he didn't follow up. He wasn't trying to go after me. I mean, he looked mad when I was saying, when I called him a fucking criminal. He looked mad at me, but he didn't snap or anything like that. Absolutely not. He, from that point after he got me off of there, he was professional enough in his behavior in the sense that he didn't totally freak out and attack me or anything. I think that lady, he probably was gratified that that lady came up and took his side in the whole thing, because that distracted me from continuing to heap scorn upon him, which I would have done had she not interrupted me. And then we might have had a really ugly situation where you're talking to my bereaved widow. Because I can be a little bit mouthy, you know.
Did you fall down?
No.
When he pushed you? Okay. Had you ever seen that officer before?
Nope.
And is your wife there with you as this happens?
No, she's over where we originally started. She never went over to the new place with me. She stayed where we originally were, where the ambulance blocked our view. But she could still see, I guess, enough for her satisfaction. I don't know. I was trying to get good filming, you know, so I couldn't have the ambulance between me and the action.
Did you see that officer have interaction with anyone else there on the median?
Nope.
Or just you?
Just me.
Do you in any way believe you contributed to what happened?
Absolutely not. I mean, what I did was I contributed in the sense that my righteous and true words made him uncomfortable because it obviously tickled his conscience about what he and the other police were involved in, although he, as far as I know, wasn't directly involved in the action with the guy, Mr. Towel on his head. But, you know, obviously he wanted to silence me because he didn't like the way that what I was saying was accurately describing what was happening and drawing everyone's attention to the fact that this pain they were inflicting upon the guy was unnecessary, excessive, and beyond the pale, frankly.
Have you had any contact with the officer since?
No, I haven't. I tried to only deal with the city by contacting the city attorney because cops scare me a little bit. You know, I didn't want to call the cops and find out. I was just nervous because it was like you hear all these horror stories about people who file complaints against police officers with the police department, and it just gets people may be ignored or whatever. You hear these horror stories. I'm not saying about Pomona PD, I'm just saying about police in general. So I was a little nervous about going to internal affairs first. I thought I'd go through city attorney first because I've talked to plenty of lawyers. I know how to talk to lawyers just fine.
Have you had any, since you brought it up, have you had any prior dealings with the Pomona Police Department?
No.
Okay. And after that happened there on the median, what did you do thereafter?
Well, then I went back to find my wife, and when I went over there, I discovered that there was this little dog. It was like a Chihuahua, and maybe a Chihuahua, part Dachshund, maybe, and it was dead. And the lady who had it was holding its dead body. And I said in the video, and I said at the time that I was angry because the cops had killed this little dog. but I actually don't know if the cops killed that little dog or not. I'm assuming they probably did. I don't know who else would have killed the little dog.
Well, why do you assume that, Eric?
Well, this is what I'm saying. I don't actually know that they killed the little dog. I'm making that clear right now. I'm assuming it only because it would seem to me if you're going to attribute a random death to anybody at that scene, it would be towards the people who were demonstrating a propensity for violence. But that's not good enough reason to conclude the cops killed it. I have no evidence they did. And I made that disclaimer on the video, on the YouTube channel, that even though I say in the video here the cops killed this, I don't actually have any evidence that the cops killed that little dog. Hopefully it died of fear, died of natural causes of a heart attack or something. That would be, I'd be fine with that. And I apologize for rushing to judgment in the video and assuming the cops killed it without any evidence. I put that disclaimer up right away when I put that video up that I didn't know that even though I said it in the video, because it wouldn't be fair to accuse them of that.
Okay. Did you at some time shortly thereafter then leave the area?
Oh yeah, then Kim and I got in the car and drove home. And talked about, wow, that was crazy.
So how long overall, Eric, time-wise, would you say you were there at that scene by the time you park, get out, and then leaving?
Probably about 1 hour. Could have been as long as 2, but I would guess closer to 1, maybe a little over.
Did you see whatever happened with that guy the police were dealing with?
No, I never did. By the time I was done with the lady, the dumb lady over there, and walked back and found Kim, it was all over. I don't know anything that happened after the cop assaulted me, because at that point my attention was no longer on what was going on except with me, and this lady and the cop and all that stuff. So I don't know anything that happened after that as far as on the scene of the guy with the towel on his head.
What am I leaving out? What else would you like to add? And I'm speaking primarily of the incident, what happened there.
The only thing I would like to add is, if you got a gang of burly armed men and one skinny looking homeless dude, and you can't capture him without doing a lot of damage to him, then you're not very good at your job.
And by that description, you're referring to the guy that they were dealing with there at that house, and
Right.
the cops being the burly guys, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Chris Millard, anything that you'd like?
No, it was thorough, and thank you for going into detail with the events of that night. I don't have anything else as far as the statement is concerned.
Okay. I know you did not know the officer at the time this happened, as you're standing there in the center median, and you learned subsequently his name.
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't ask, could you describe him for me?
He's he's such a plain-looking regular white dude, He's
I'm sorry, plain-looking white dude, did you say? Okay.
Plain-looking regular white dude. He's clean-shaven. He's got a neat, sort of squarish haircut, I guess. And he's pretty nondescript. He's got kind of a square jaw. His face sort of looks a little bit similar shape to your face, frankly. A little similar to your face. And he's not that tall. He's definitely shorter than me by, at least a head. And, I don't know, just regular dude. He looks like a regular dude.
Okay. You're how tall, sir?
I'm 6'4" and a half. But that doesn't make me a threat, okay? Just because I'm tall doesn't mean I'm more likely to be threatening. Also, Well, I was shouting at him. It's true that I was angry, but there was nothing about what I was doing that was threatening or indicative that I was going to be a threat or anything like that. Just because somebody's angry and tall doesn't make them subject to violence or silencing. It would be a better way to describe what happened to me. It doesn't make them subject to silencing by a government agent who doesn't like what they're saying.
How much do you weigh?
170-ish, 175 maybe. I haven't weighed myself in a while.
You appeared of a slender build.
I've always
Would
been
that be a
like
good
this.
way to
Yeah,
describe
I've
it?
always been skinny.
Okay.
I eat lots of food, but it doesn't ever change my body.
May I ask you, do you have a profession?
I'm a
Or-
debate coach.
A debate coach. Okay. High school, college, or?
High school and middle school. I mostly do middle school now
Okay.
because of league politics.
For a number of different school
For
districts?
not for districts, for mostly private academies and school programs like that. I have worked for full day schools as well. But the reason I coach mostly in middle school is the competition leagues allow private businesses to compete against regular schools. So that's where the money is.
How long you been doing that?
About 15 years.
Okay.
Prior to that, I was an English teacher, and prior to that, a special education teacher. And prior to that, a debater back in high school.
Makes sense, so you're very well spoken.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Let me conclude. Time I've got is 11:24 a.m. And I always ask one last question at the end of all recorded interviews. And
Okay.
the question is this: do you declare under the penalty of perjury that all your answers have been true and correct to the best of your ability and the best of your recollection?
Absolutely, I do. I declare that I've told the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and that I take the issue of perjury seriously and would never lie either, not if I weren't under oath, but certainly not under oath. So this is the absolute full truth as to the best of my recollection.
Thank you.
You're
The
welcome.
end.
The end. That was fun. That was
Wasn't it,
super
though?
exciting.
Okay.